It's Thursday, it's 5, we're live. Frankly speaking, where truth is our mission, rally our realm, set as we see it, and frankly as well, and by popular demand, the return of Ralph Briggs. How are you, Ralph?
Thank you very much for having me back, Joe.
Well, you know, Paul, who's doing who knows what.
He's in San Francisco?
He was. I don't know where he is now. And apparently a constituent of President Sear had a problem, and he's attending to it. You know, we want to have him back, so don't worry about it.
So I'm like a relief pitcher.
You are.
Out of the bullpen.
Remember Dick Raditz. You're old enough to remember Dick Raditz, so, you know.
But this is long relief, though, right now.
Yes, but you do a great job. That's why we have you in. Frankly, Joe, let's get that up there. Well, folks, the search is over. 19 candidates have applied to be Lynn's next superintendent of schools. A selection committee, 12 in number, is impaneled to narrow the field to 4. The finalists will be interviewed publicly through the month of May. By June 1st, the new superintendent should and will be hired. For the past month, community focus groups stressing raising MCAS scores, school nutrition, overcrowding, the need for new schools, sensitivity to diversity, bullying, school safety, and a myriad of other issues all over the city. I think there were 4 of them, Ralph, if I'm not mistaken, focus groups?
4 focus groups,
yeah,
I believe.
Focus, yeah. Here's the thing. The next superintendent will preside over a ballooning budget of $230 million and climbing. So, to my way of thinking, Ralph, the single most important quality the new superintendent should possess is a sharp pencil and a willingness to use it. A mere 3 to 5%. Now, notice the quotations here. Efficiency reduction. That's a Joe Spina term, folks. I don't want anybody stealing it from me. And the overall budget would return between 8 to 12 million. Wouldn't that be nice? Our number here is 781-780-9460. Ralph?
You know, I think I read about, I think it was in Everett, that they're doing a zero-based budget.
Yes.
For everything. That means they start at the beginning and they work up. What do I need? You know, I need 50 boxes of pencils. I need a gym team. You go up and up and up and up, every category, and you add on, all right? Everything you need, essentially. Yeah. And I don't know if they can do that. The problem is there's so many state restrictions on what you have to have.
Let me correct you on that.
Okay.
First of all, let me start with zero base. I believe that's Malcolm Mitchell took me to school on that one.
Okay.
And Malcolm, if you're out there, you know, let us know exactly what it's all about, because I'm not quite sure about it. I've heard the concept. Anybody out there, as a matter of fact.
Right.
I talked to I had a wonderful a wonderful Easter. Boy, I'm getting senile here. I hope you folks did too. I was with my entire family, and my oldest granddaughter is married to a chief of staff for the governor and the lieutenant governor. And they meet every day for 2 hours to discuss issues. And I said to her, I said, you know, one of the big problems in the city of Lynn, and they claim, is that you will not allow, the state will not allow them to adjust their budgets because they're mandated to do so. He says, that's not true. I said, are you kidding me? He said, no, that's not true. So I'm going to try to find out, particularly when President Sear is here,
right, whether
in fact there is some type of restrictions that you pointed out.
I believe that you have the city side. The people don't understand there's a city side and there's a school side, completely different. And I believe that the school budget has to be a certain percentage of the city side, I believe. And
well, the school budget is in excess of the total. It's more than half of the budget.
Correct.
It's running around 230 million, everything included.
But
the argument is, and the school committee has no control over it since 2.5.
Right.
Okay? It's the mayor. In fact, the city council must accept the budget as proposed by the mayor. Either accept or reject. There's no line item veto on that.
Under the Reform Act, they have nothing to do with the budget. They have nothing to do with personnel. And nothing to do with curriculum. Did you know that? Nothing.
Well, yeah, because they're on receivership life. No,
that's a state law. That's Tommy Birmingham's educational reform package that was passed years ago. That's state law.
Well, but the argument that the city must is vis-a-vis the state now. I can't speak about the federal government. Is not correct that they are restricted and must spend this money, because what I'm saying is if they must spend, then local communities have no control over their school budgets. You know, I mean, it doesn't make sense.
I mean, President Sir, when he was here, I remember 2 or 3 weeks ago, said that there was nothing to cut. I just can't believe there's nothing to cut. Because when they went into Chelsea, when Chelsea went into receivership, they cut a lot. This is years ago.
Why don't we use a better term? It's not necessarily cutting. They became efficient. See, everybody, cut is a negative, it's pejorative.
Right.
So people love to say cut because cuts hurt.
Right.
But an efficiency adjustment, as I call it,
Right.
is a different issue entirely.
Right. There may not have to be anybody laid off, you know. Maybe nobody
Well, what
laid
if they
off.
have to be lay off some people? So they are superfluous. You know, look, Ralph, 85% of the budget in the city of Lynn is salaries.
Of course.
Okay, that's a given. So the point being is, if you want, the city of Lynn has right now, as we speak, a structural problem in its budget. And you haven't got the time to development isn't going to happen fast enough in order to get revenue, excess revenue, which is why we got slapped with a trash fee, which is why, by the way, folks, you have a few more weeks. You should have been paying your real estate tax by today, or by Monday, right?
Monday.
But now it's been delayed until May. And that's going to go up. And I'll tell you why it's going to go up, because they're going to say your property is worth more. So in effect, you're going to be paying more. Look, I paid $4,300 in 214.
Right.
I was doing my taxes. I paid $5,300 in 217. Okay. What do you think it's going to be in 218, 219? You think it's going to stay at 53?
But you know, a lot of new people, here's where it's going to hurt a lot of people. A lot of new people have just bought home. They buy homes in Lynn.
Yeah.
And they buy condos.
Yeah.
Our family just sold a condo, all right? Much higher price than it would have been worth 4 years ago. Now, that mortgage now is a lot more money. Mm-hmm. So he's going to pay a lot more money on his mortgage. So he doesn't have that much more money to spend on the extra money that's going to be needed for taxes and for more water. Do you understand what I mean? In other words, they have a higher mortgage. People have higher mortgages last 2 or 3 years. Because if you look at...
Because the real estate values went up. And they also, as a portion of that, their taxes went up because it's predicated on the sale of the condo. It's not predicated on the old tax rate. If they were taxing a house, for example, at $150,000,
right,
and it gets sold at $200,000, then the taxes go up, not to $200 necessarily, but it's certainly higher than the $150 that they were collecting.
Right.
So it's adjusted up everywhere.
It's played on both sides of the rate and the value. Okay, and they have to get a certain amount of money for the budget.
But
okay?
the city of Lynn can only really get money from its residents because we don't have any commercial property anymore. Only about 8% of the total income coming in from property tax is from commercial.
Correct.
92% is coming from the residential area. And that is really a burden, because what we have, and this is why I have problems with a lot of these projects that are being built, that for the low income, where they bring in 2 and 3 bedrooms, which means by virtue of that, they're going to bring kids in, and they're going to go to the school system, and that compounds the problem.
This is a real problem, and the only way, the only way the city can actually increase beyond 2.5% is if they have more buildings going up, because the capitalization goes up. You understand what that is?
Of course I do.
You know what that is?
Yes, of course I do.
Most people do not understand that at all. Well, if they say they were going to put in 8 buildings that were going to be completed on the waterfront this year and on the tax rolls this year, the taxes could go up the next year proportionately, because the capitalization would go up over and above the 2.5.
That's true. But here's the issue there. I think it was 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Governor Baker was at the Port Hope Pub at a fundraiser to which I was invited, and I went down to have my roast beef. Right. Cost me $50 for a couple of roast beef sandwiches.
You go Tuesday, it's only $4 for a hamburger. I'll buy next Tuesday if you want.
Well, I'm trying to become a vegetarian, given the fact that I'm a fat pig. But over and above that, a couple of fellows approached me who were developing on the Chevrolet site.
Right.
And I said, is that going to happen? I asked them a simple question. And they said they'd love it to happen, but the big problem is regulation is killing them. You know, they have to go through the state agency and this agency and the other agencies. You know, Donald Trump cut back on all that stuff, and the economy is booming. We're at 4.1% unemployment as I speak tonight, folks. And here's the problem. There aren't a lack of jobs. There's a whole bunch of jobs. The problem is they can't fill them. You know, people don't want to move. They don't want to go from a rural area to where the jobs are.
And sometimes they can't move because they're still under, and much of the country, they still cannot get out of their mortgage because they're underwater. Still,
that's true.
Some parts of the country, they can't move.
But even at that, they're not willing to move. Even, you know, they're not willing to move to jobs. In some instances, they're better off in these rural areas because they're low-income area. I mean, they're low-cost areas, right? And what they're receiving in benefits from the state and the federal government, it makes it more advantageous for them not to have a job. That's crazy.
I go into Price Right almost every day and pick up one or two things. And one time, this is amazing. They had a little set to as far as hiring people, okay? And they had a couple of people from personnel there, and they put signs up all week. We were hiring, and so the next day when I went, I asked one of the managers. I said, "How did you do in the hiring? How many did you hire?" He said, "We didn't have one person show up. Not one person show up.
Yeah.
Not one person showed up."
That's right. And you do know, right now, as I said, we're at 4.1% unemployment, which is fundamentally full employment.
Right.
In the last 8 years, the employment was way up there. You know, it was bad economic policy has bad returns. Same thing as why can't they build in the city of Lynn rapidly is because you have all of these, you know, obstacles, regulations preventing, you know, and some of them are necessary, don't get me wrong, but some of them are just counterproductive. Let me get to something that happened Tuesday.
Okay.
They had Student Government Day, in which a bunch of high school students go down and they make believe they're on the school committee and the city council, and they get a feel for what government's all like. And the issue that came up, or the major issue, if we can throw that up, Pedro, is school safety. And issue one was the use of K-9 sniffing jobs in schools to search for drugs and weapons in student lockers. Now, the debate on that was, it's a reasonable safety measure. Is it intrusive? It has the potential for militarizing schools. Now, you can look at it 15 different ways this Sunday. I think it's a pretty good idea.
It is legal. You can't search lockers. You can search inside of schools. It is allowed, you know. You don't need a warrant. Did you know that?
What about if they just had these K-dogs go through, do a little sniffing, and they point to a certain locker, and doesn't it?
It could be opened, yes.
Yeah, I mean that seems like a reasonable proposal, and yet there were others who argued that it was intrusive, you know.
Right.
And others argued, well, it has the potential to militarize the schools. Now I don't know where they get these terms. All of a sudden you have K-dogs, and all of it, you know, the tanks and the Air Force are going to start rolling into the schools. I mean, you know, it gets to be ridiculous after a while. You know. After 9/11, you, me, and all those folks out there gave a piece of their freedom and liberty away for safety and security.
It was almost, you know, when I fly to Florida, it was getting harder and harder for a long time, taking everything off and trying to put where is everything when you finally get through the line, and you have the smallest thing in your pocket, they would stop you. Yeah. But now, last year, they let you go pretty quick. No, they're slacking off a little bit.
A little?
A little.
They showed that about 90% of the people get through there with no problem. You know, they're not overly effective, by the way.
I know.
You know, and particularly if you're a dog. If you're a dog, don't fly. But in any case, safety in the schools is a debate. And someone said, well, you know, the president said maybe we should arm teachers. Now, folks, understand this. I'll get to the second part in a second. Understand this. The majority of teachers are female.
Right.
Females are pretty much adverse to guns, more so than men. So it would be natural that school teachers, by and large, would be opposed to being armed because most of them are females. They don't want to run around with, you know, Lugers.
Most people cannot fire a weapon, have never fired a weapon, and don't have an inclination to fire a weapon. And so it's very, I would say out of the whole teacher population, there might be 5 or 6 people that have a license to fire and want to fire or have fired. I fired a weapon in the military.
Yeah.
So To me, a weapon is nothing. If I had to have a weapon, I could fire it.
But let me ask you
unless
this.
you fired a weapon, I've had people tell me, oh, I think I'm afraid, especially women, they'll tell me, I'm going to get a gun, and I'll use it if I have to. I said, if you've never fired a weapon, you'll never fire it. You'll never fire it in anger or defense. I don't think you'll ever will.
I don't own a gun. I never owned a gun.
Right.
I'm not in the NRA. Like you, I probably don't know how to even pull a trigger, you know?
But
here's the
no,
thing.
in the military I did. So.
But here's the thing. The universe of teachers, as you say, that would be adept at being able to fire a gun and use it properly is very narrow. And I believe that that was recognized because the word I kept hearing was adept. It wasn't just, you know, lining everybody up to go get a gun. It was a school has 1 or 2, 3 people in there that, you know what they're doing. Maybe that's a good idea. We're going to go to 3 minutes to break. Let's get down to the second issue that was taken care of, Pedro, before we go to break. And this is, should students be allowed to use cell phones during lockdowns or secure and hold? And the debate is that students could contact their parents. That's a good thing. On the other side of the coin, and the other positives, students could stay connected and know what's happening. Here's the downside. It could incite panic, you know, too much information. And lastly, could alert the shooter to where the students are hiding. Let me give the number and then you respond. 781-780-9460. Go get them, Ralph.
I think I'd really rather have communications, okay? It's very, very important. Because here's the problem.
Go ahead.
Say there's a problem in English, all right? There's a shooter in English. The police get the call. You're a policeman out there. You come, you're a sergeant. You're the first one to respond. What do? Where is he? It's a big building. Where am I going to go? This is a real problem. And if you don't know, if you have students with phones, with cell phones, and can call, then at least they somehow would get that word back, and they would know where the shooter is.
So you think it's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. And you know, these are the arguments that they were debating, and the kids had to realize it's not cut and dry, Ralph. It's not black and white. There's a lot of gray areas, and you've got to make a decision in the best interest. For example, I have no problem with K-9 dogs sniffing around the school. Now, I don't think you need them in K through 5. You get what I mean? I don't think there are too many kids walking around with drugs and guns in the elementary school. But once you get up into the senior high school, or even maybe in some instances the middle school, perhaps you could use them. So it's it's common sense and judgment.
Right. I don't know how many drugs are in the schools, and I'm sure many of the students take drugs outside, maybe marijuana, I'm not sure. But inside the school, I don't think that they are. I think they're alert enough to know that you don't bring drugs to school.
I'm not so sure, Ralph. The opioid epidemic is really staggering.
But isn't that with the 20-year-olds though? Isn't it mostly the 20-year-olds?
You think?
I think so. Yeah.
Let me tell you, some of these unaccompanied minors that we have, as the former mayor said, have gray hair and are shaving.
No, what I see, I do my walk around the city. I see everything. I run into lawyers. I run into shop people.
And we ran into a break, and you're going to talk about it when we get back. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Lynn Community Television, your local media center. Here, we have great resources and staff to help create your own content.
Hi, I'm Jim Carrigan, host of The American Dream. I'm also a member of Lynn Community TV, and I want to encourage everybody out there who's not a member of Lynn Community TV to join the group. We have a lot of fun down here. The studio is new and it's in fabulous condition.
Things provided to our members are state-of-the-art studio, video and audio equipment, editing space, and a full-on training session with a staff member.
I've been involved in access television for over 20 years. Our shows have gone out to tens of thousands of people in local communities and millions throughout the world. Come on down, learn how to use the equipment to promote whatever it is you're doing.
For more information, please visit our website at www.lyntv.org, give us a call, or come on down to the station at 181 Union Street in Lynn.
And we're back. And you were talking about your lawyer friends.
I see everyone on the street. Okay,
Everybody.
All kinds of street.
Yeah.
All kinds of people on the street, and the people that I see that are what I call goofed up. All right. Basically 20-year-old kids that I see out there. They're 20-year-olds, almost all, maybe 19. All
And
right?
mostly men.
And they're mostly males.
Boys?
Well, the funny thing is that they're almost always in pairs. Actually, they're in pairs. A young woman and a young guy. They're almost in pairs,
In pairs?
almost all the time.
Okay.
All right? And I see it every day. I see 3 or 4 of them every day. And I do my 3-mile walk around the core city, and I see it every single day. All right? But and I believe, from where I see them coming from, I believe they're coming from the methadone clinic
On the Linway.
on the Linway.
Yeah.
That's what I believe they're coming from.
Carla, how are you? And welcome to Frankly Speaking. Have we got it up there yet? Well, we'll wait until I see it up. There it is. What do you think about having cameras in classrooms? That's a good question, isn't it?
In some areas of the country, they do have cameras in classrooms. They do, but the teachers don't like it because they think it's too intrusive.
The word we used earlier, intrusive.
Intrusive, yeah. But you think, I mean, cameras aren't that expensive now, I believe.
Well,
A camera system, to have a camera in every classroom?
Well, wait, let me point something out. I believe Governor Baker on Monday is requiring all state troopers or state police to wear body cameras, because a number of them were being paid for doing work they didn't do.
Right.
He was reforming it. That's the good news. The bad news is it is intrusive.
It is.
But it also can help you in an area where someone tries to lay a dime on you and you didn't do what they claim you did, because the video proof. Although that can be deceiving too. I don't know the answer. I tend to, I'm kind of a libertarian. I would tend to not like the idea of peeping Toms, you know, people looking into classrooms and stuff. But that's opinion. I have to think about it.
Well, the building I live in, we have cameras everywhere downstairs. They always can see us. Okay.
Well,
I mean, it's just the way of life it is today. And,
well, it's 1984, Ralph.
You know,
it's
yeah,
Big Brother
I know,
and all that type of stuff. So I'm a little leery of it.
I know. It's
you know, I feel personally, I feel uncomfortable with it, but it's worth thinking about. You know, understand something. When I came down here to do the show, I drove on the right-hand side of the road at a prescribed speed. And I stopped at red lights. That was to enhance my safety and everybody else's, right?
Right.
Not dodge them.
right.
So you need to forfeit certain rights in order to ensure your safety. You know, this school shooting stuff is really sad and tragic. However, here's what bothers me, Ralph. It's not guns that are the problem. The problem is every single instance. Gun is an instrument.
Right.
It's individuals. And you know what the profile is? Lack of fathers in the home. These are young boys generally do the shooting, and they don't have fathers.
That's right.
They're not learning right and wrong and stuff like that.
Every time there's a problem in the school, and I taught in Boston for 2 years, and this is going way, way back.
Yeah.
Every time there's a problem, the child did not have a father. Every single time. The only time I had a problem with one of my homeroom students, I had a problem with him. I brought the parents up, and the father, right? They have mother and father. The only time that anything was done, he had a father. There was a father involved, and I never had a problem. Never had a problem again. Okay.
Well, see, I wish folks, and if you want to call in and talk about this, I'd be more than happy to do it. Look, guns, like I said, I don't own one. I don't care for them. They're necessary evil, okay? That's it.
In a lot of the rural areas of the country, they're necessary because
they're necessary.
People don't realize that, you know, a lot of this country is very rural. We don't have, right now we have a police, the police can come here in two minutes if we need them. 2 minutes, right? I mean, they have, 6 cars out there, they can get a car here. But if we lived out in Montana somewhere, or even parts of Alabama, they have sheriffs, and it might take them a half an hour to get there.
That's common sense.
That's why people need weapons in
you also need guns, or the prospect of having guns, in case you have a tyrannical government. How else are you going to,
That's right.
Having a gun is better than not having a gun,
right?
Regardless of whether they have tanks or not. But let me go one step further. This really troubles me. In those areas where they have the strictest gun control laws, they have the highest incident of violent crime. Do you know that as the increase in guns in this country, the actual crime rate has gone down, murder rate's gone down, and violence rate's gone down. So, you know, what we're seeing is really more aberration than reality.
Right.
I mean, no, I'm sorry, let me restate that. The reality is people are getting killed and shot, that's bad.
Right, that's very bad.
But the incident of it is actually mitigating.
Right.
And before we go on to another topic, what else were you going to say about...
Well, the things, they overreact to these AR-15s, which are really M16s, all right? They're regular Army weapon for years. Up until very recently, it was a regular Army weapon, just as the musket was when the Constitution was written. So the reason for the Second Amendment is so that we can have people with arms in case there is an insurrection or the government can completely control us in a way that we don't want it to do. It seems unlikely, but let me tell you something. And I believe I said this last week. Does anybody know what's going on in Europe? That Jews are leaving all over Europe because of the ISIS people that they let in?
So
35,000 in the last 3 years have left Europe because of it.
France.
Excuse me, France.
France.
France, have left France.
Because France had Algeria, which is a Muslim nation.
Right.
And they've had a lot of Algerians who come in to their country, right?
That's true.
And they don't particularly get along with the Jews, which is hilarious because throughout history, they're very close.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Now, that phenomenon could take place in this country.
That's my point. Now, here you have established old world governments, France and England. Most of our laws are based on England, some a little bit in French, a little bit of
How about Roman law?
Roman law, right? But so we have now in this country, right? They say, well, how could this ever happen in our country? But if Clinton had gotten in, how many do you think there would have been a different situation of who would be coming over here? I think so. I think there'd be a different group of people in here, completely changed in the country, just the way that Europe is being completely changed.
Ralph, the past administration, of which Clinton would have been an extension of it, right?
Correct.
Fundamentally gave away pieces of our sovereignty to international institutions, be it the United Nations, the Paris Peace Accord, the World Trade Organization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, the city of Lynn, folks, listen to this. This is how scary it gets. In 1950, a long time ago, the United Nations Refugee Organization designated the city of Lynn as a refugee city. And they went through our State Department, who now enforces that. So Lynn is a stop place for refugees that the United Nations deems to send to Lynn, and they hire contractors from the State Department to settle them in Lynn because of our housing stock and our social agencies that we have here. That's one of the reasons why our school budget, that's one of the reasons why we have so many kids in our school system on that issue on the refugees. But it goes further than that, okay? What they're trying to do, in effect, is taking folks, we have no borders, you understand that?
There's no borders, no.
There's no border. Everybody pours through the southern border from everywhere. It's not just, see, folks, it's not just Mexicans and Central Americans. If somebody from any country, be it Yemen, or be it Syria, or be it, ISIS, that group there, from Iraq, if they chose to come to the United States, they go to Mexico and then walk through the border.
Mexico lets them go right through.
Right through.
Right through. And let's face it, it's going to be very, very difficult to stop everybody from coming in.
No, it isn't.
Well,
let me ask you something. If walls didn't work, why do they have them in prisons?
That's true.
Huh?
The wall would work, but I doubt he'll ever get the money
You know how many prisoners that get out of there? Not very many.
No.
I mean, ask the folks in Sing Sing and Alcatraz and places like that with whether walls work or not. They do work, but nobody wants to admit to it.
The problem is the drugs. Now they're saying most of the drugs, the heroin, is coming through Mexico.
Fentanyl, which is worse.
Fentanyl, which comes from... Fentanyl is artificial heroin, I understand.
Coming from China.
Coming from China, going through Mexico, into
Lynn, Mass.
To Lynn, Mass.
Thank you very much.
That's how it's done.
Let's move toward another subject. And it's a good one. This is Chapter 2 of Beyond Walls, which I think was, in fact, our set shows Beyond Walls. I don't know if we can put it up there, but Mass Development and Patron City, a Michigan-based crowdfunding platform, have launched a campaign to raise $100,000 to treat Lynn to a second rendition of the highly successful Beyond Walls mural jamboree of last summer, which brought a whole bunch of tourists to the city of Lynn that used our restaurants, spent money in the city, and actually, you weren't too fond of them painting the buildings. You like art.
I love the art. The art is the greatest thing in the world. What they should be doing is doing some murals, some 3D stuff of the history of Lynn, all right, and the new minority community too. But the painting the buildings is too much for me. It's just too much. I mean, I know everybody disagrees with me with that, but I've had people from outside the city tell me when they've driven in, they said, what is going on?
Well, let me ask the folks out there, 781-780-9460. Is Ralph got something there? Is he onto something about the buildings? Well, it's not for him. Actually, to be honest with you, Ralph, I kind of like them.
You like them? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, the art is beautiful. I mean, they're fantastically professionally done. No question about
Well,
it. But I would have liked to see them on some kind of canvases somewhere in the city. And
my canvas is big enough.
Well,
I mean, it's a lot better than looking at old brick buildings, I'll tell you that. In
that's
some
true.
instances, you know, I had the opposite. There are folks that I've driven through Lynn who look up and look at them and say, wow. I mean, they're really impressed with them. We're going to do our wax or not. And we got 3 more minutes. So before I open up another segment, Ralph, folks, 781-780-9460. Ralph says, he doesn't particularly like those buildings being painted. I kind of like them, to be honest with you. I do like the lighting, the illumination.
the lighting is good. They were working on that today when I did I think they're working on it more, putting more lighting in, I think.
Well,
Under the railroad? Under the railroad.
yeah, underneath there. And you find it that you walk at nighttime?
Yeah, once in a while, yeah.
So you find that to be...
It's nice.
It certainly deters crime.
Right, it's good. It's a very, very good thing. That's what I like to see. And I would like to see some really art down, some freestanding boards, you know, encased in lucite with art, maybe local art and some of this professional stuff they bring in. I would like to see that. And some seats around there, so in the warmer parts of the year, have people come down there, be able to get a coffee and sit outside, and this is what I like to see.
Well, Raw Art's in that area. That's a wonderful institution
yes.
for kids, and I encourage any young folks out there, folks, if you want to get your kids involved in some of that Raw Art is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
I just think they could expand that more and get it into the city, especially in the
That's a
warmer
good point.
nights.
And also, don't they have the concerts at Red Rock, and
Red
they
Rock.
use young bands
Right.
from Lynn here,
Right.
don't they?
No, I don't think they're young bands. I think they're.
Are you sure? Because I thought that the mayor's son, the former mayor's son, had a band, and they played down there. I'm pretty sure.
Down at Red Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. One or two, maybe one or two.
We have a lot of really
But
good musicians.
I'd like to see back into the core city. I'd like to see some stuff in the core city. They
Downtown Lynn?
They're downtown. That's where I like to see. That's where I would like to see it.
You know, what about the situation? See, here's where I find a problem with Mount Vernon Street. That's where the old item used to be in the train tracks.
Right.
They should never make that a one-way street. It should be a two-way street.
Right.
Because you need traffic coming from 2 different directions. There, it would generate more activity, in my view. I don't know whether they did it because of the bus stop or what.
They're having that food court thing coming in there soon.
Well, if
Down
they're
Mount
going to
Vernon.
bring in that court, then it's much better to be you know, if you're coming from out of town, you come up the Linway, you come up Spring Street, right?
Right.
You can't have it one way. That you can't. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
You need to have more circular. See, they got to revisit the traffic flows in the city of Lynn because you want circular traffic as opposed to.
That's right. It's very difficult to get in and around and stop somewhere and park somewhere and partake of anything in downtown. It's very, very difficult.
Because of the flow.
It is a strange flow of traffic. Very strange. Very, very strange flow.
781-780-9460. I'm going to introduce it. In case you didn't know, and playing cards existed in Persia and throughout the Arabian Peninsula as early as the 8th century. That would have been right after Muhammad, by the way. There is archaeological documentation in 12th century China of card playing. And effectively, let me finish this up now, gypsies and merchants are credited with having introduced playing cards into European culture from Egypt in the 14th century. Now, Gutenberg came up with the printing press in Germany.
Right.
Now, that printing press was critical. It was the great leap forward for playing cards because they could churn out decks 100 at a time. The earliest European designs were Latin suits, and they were swords, batons, cups, and coins. The Italian deck looks a lot like that.
Right.
The Germans and the Swiss introduced hearts, bells, leaves, and acorns. Elegant stuff. It was the French who instituted the modern hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds, and that was back in 1480s. And
Right.
that is pretty much it.
I think it started. I think cards started in China just before the year 1000. I think
Yeah,
And
it said the 8th century.
the 8th century. Well,
Right. But basically in Persia, in the Arabian Peninsula.
okay, then it moved over and into Egypt, and I think Egypt had started certain kind of wooden block printing presses.
was.
I think that's how they started, wooden block.
Yes, that was the Gutenberg, and that expanded.
No,
Now,
the Gutenberg was hot type.
and when it came to this country, printing technology changed the whole thing too. The jack came into being as a consequence that they used to call it a knave. King and the knave, they didn't like that at the corner, so they changed it to the jack.
Right.
We'll be back with more about card playing right after this break.
Once you shoot your first needle, you become feeble. Your body begins to ache and deteriorate. If you don't seek help fast, your inner voice will wheedle you into doing worse than that.
And we are back with a deck of cards, you know, the history of cards, which I find fascinating, having a little bit of a gambling streak in me.
I played a lot of Texas Hold'em a while ago. That's the last time I played cards, Texas Hold'em.
Ah.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty good game.
Yeah, but you top at Cal's and buy your little lottery tickets, you know.
Well,
Who are you
I
kidding?
do. I hit once in a while, once in a great while at Cal's.
Let me test you. 4 kings and a deck of cards, right?
Right.
They represent certain kings in history. Now, the king of spades, without you looking up at the monitor, the king of
gonna look.
spades represents who?
I don't know.
Look up.
Okay.
King of spades is David, the king of Israel.
David, king of Israel.
The
right.
king of hearts would be Charlemagne, the king of the
France.
the Holy Roman. However, he was neither holy nor Roman.
Right.
We'll put up 2 more, and then we'll go to the caller. The king of diamonds, and they argue about this, whether it was Augustus or Julius Caesar. And lastly, the king of clubs is supposed to represent Alexander the Great, Macedonia.
Oh.
Caller, how are you? Welcome to Frankly Speaking and Mr. Ralph. Surface walls aren't enough. People would dig under them. We need to build walls at least 30 feet underground. Pete, you know, I'm not so sure that we do.
He's got a little bit of a point in that they do, the tunnels. They do tunnel, and they found tunnels, from Mexico underneath into Texas, into New Mexico, whatever.
Yeah.
They found them. They've
Yeah.
actually found them. And it takes them a long time to do it, but they've got plenty of money, and they get plenty of help. And they do.
Let me ask you this.
How are you going to? How are you going to?
Let me ask you this.
The cost.
Does a dam, a wall that holds back a mighty river work or not?
Right.
Well, you don't think that we have the technology to hold back to go down? If we had to go down 30 feet, we can, can't we? You don't necessarily have to do it. What if you were building on bedrock? You know, they're going to chisel their way through granite?
Right, then they have to have rods and...
Right. So my point being is, no matter what, there's always going to be leakage. There's always going to be enterprising people that are going to go over, under, around.
Right.
But does the wall effectively stop a massive flow? See or no?
It will stop the majority. But the caller does have a very good point. Very, very good point.
Which is what?
That he's worried about the tunnels.
He's worried about digging under.
Right.
That's a negative, right, to the wall, unless you go down 30 feet, right? So does that deter you from building the wall?
No, it shouldn't.
Okay.
Because
even if you didn't go down 30 feet, would the wall effectively shut off a lot of the flow?
Of course it will. Along with cameras. Again, cameras are not that expensive. They could have the cameras too. So if somebody was trying to go over the wall with ropes, rope ladders or whatever, they could stop them if they had cameras. This whole thing could be done if there was. There doesn't seem to be a plan to block off that whole area.
Yeah.
From Texas all the way to California. You've got to block it off somehow.
The Chinese did it. The Great Wall of China is over 2,000 miles long. You can see it from space. That's how massive it is, right? And that was done before John Deere and bulldozers.
That was to stop the Mongolians, I believe.
Whatever. They certainly didn't have the heavy-duty machinery we have today, and they effectively did it. It was called slave labor, but nevertheless, it worked, right? And it's still standing. So this argument that walls don't work is fallacious. They work. Now, are they 100% effective? Of course not. Nothing is. But they work.
Hundreds of billions of dollars overseas to build the infrastructure.
And walls
Iraq,
for the countries.
Yes, Afghanistan and Iraq.
What about Palestine and Israel? What about that wall? You don't think there's a wall there dividing?
There's a wall there.
Oh, of course.
Right.
What about, so there's a Wailing Wall too. Look, the point is they don't want to admit to the fact because open border people don't want you to shut down the border. So they're going to use every excuse possible to tell you it's a waste of money, this, that, and the rest of it. But it isn't.
They say it's because we need people to pick crops, and we do. But why can't you have a card? Everybody's got a card. You go in your wallet, you get a card, an ID card. Why can't you, if you want to work, you get an ID card, and you're allowed over the border during certain times.
So we have work visas, whatever you call it. You know, you brought up something last week that I'm going to take up in a little bit because I want to finish off with our cards.
Okay.
I'm going to give the people an array of what the cards look like through the centuries and the evolution. So let's show, what are they, French, Pedro, the French, Arabic, Saudi, Egyptian, and whatever cards. We have that up there. Yeah. Look at the designs. They're quite beautiful. And I'm sure you can always figure out they're in order. French, Arabic, Saudi, Egyptian, Indian, and Spaniolo. You know, Pedro can read that. I can't.
Yeah.
And then on the next set, this is fascinating. Russia. I think Russia's got a, yeah, there they say king there. You can tell that's Chinese, can't you, huh? The Chinese guy. And notice the ace of clubs. That's English, actually, British. And the other one is Persian. The last one there. You can see the writing. And lastly, folks, take a look at this. I mean, those Japanese cards are pretty attractive, aren't they? How about these old German ones, huh? And Ethiopian. And guess who I don't have up there? Pedro threw out the Italians. That last group of the Italians. Yeah, I have it, but he doesn't. But you know, it's really fascinating that all these various nationalities all over the globe, all over the, have playing cards.
It is.
And it's probably, maybe we should have a card playing tournament, on international card playing anywhere.
On TV.
And get everybody together and they can stop with this nuclear stuff. Play cards instead.
True, yeah.
One witty Paul. I'm bringing this up because it's fascinating to me. His name was Martin Lomancy. Lomancy, yeah. He was nicknamed, by the way,
the Mahatma.
Yeah. And you know why?
Why?
Because he had his uncanny ability to deliver votes for his preferred candidates. Apparently you don't have your glasses, huh?
I can read it. Do you want me to read it?
Of course.
Never write when you can speak. Never speak when you can nod. Never nod when you can wink.
Don't you like that one? That's his famous expression.
Right. Yeah, I think
Once
the Mafia
again,
took that on.
never write when you can speak. Never speak when you can nod. Never nod when you can wink.
There's got to be in every word somebody that any bloke can come to, no matter what he's done, and get help. Help, you understand. None of your law and your justice, but help.
Right. But you see what's happened is he was considered the boss of Ward 8 in Boston. And he battled Kennedy's grandfather, Honey Fitz. Didn't like him at all. In fact, he supported a Republican for governor against him. It's hilarious. We don't tell them how to vote. No, we don't do that. We suggest. Right. It's like that. We don't tell them, we suggest. In this city, I wish we'd suggest. We don't even vote for anybody.
There's only one person to vote for, and no one goes anyways.
Yeah. Anyways, Carl, I'll be right with you. The great mass of people are interested in only three things. This is important. That's what he says. Food, clothing, and shelter. The politician in a district like mine sees to it that the people get these things. Food, shelter and clothing. Makes sense. Carl, how are you? Welcome to Frankly Speaking. And Mexican drug dealers are using drones to drop off drugs over the border. Any ideas how to stop that? Yeah, shoot them down.
Well, I believe that we can stop that with sense. We must have sensors that can. The military must have a ability to stop drones, because they know drones. We're using drones right now, over in Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan. I know we are. Military is using drones to go over to map and to see where the enemy is and installations are. And I'm sure we know how to stop the drones from coming back at us. So
wait a minute, we've got the technology. We've got the technology to send people to the moon and to Mars. Right. And you're trying to tell me, or anybody out there trying to tell me, that we don't have the technologies to shoot down drones?
We don't have the willingness to do it.
Yeah, well, that's a different issue. We certainly have the wherewithals, some form of radar or whatever you want to call it, to put up there and screen and say, as they're coming over, bing, 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 right? And they go down and go up in smoke. Is that another caller we have there? If so, put them up. Let me know. No. So, I mean, Ralph, most of this stuff is the will and the desire to want to do it. Is that right?
I don't think we have. I think Trump has the will to do it. The Congress does not have the will to do it.
You don't think Congress would be interested in shutting down the flow of opioids and fentanyl from Mexico over? I mean, that's a great point he's making. If you put a wall up, they're going to fly them over by drones, right? Good point. But we can identify where that's happening, can't we?
We can. I believe that we can identify it.
Okay.
That the military can see them coming over. But again, it's going to be a military problem. And, you know, we get the posse comitatus law, and they were talking about that all week.
Which one?
Posse comitatus. In other words, there's a law from 1887.
Yeah, what does it say?
And basically it says this: the military cannot engage in police action within the continental United States unless Congress specifically lets them do it.
That's not true. That is not true. Obama sent troops down there in the last administration.
National Guard, and they have to be.
Well, that's right, but there's still troops.
Right. But
and Bush sent troops down there himself.
But they have to be under the direction at that time. If the Congress doesn't vote it,
you're talking about the Army versus the National Guard?
The National Guard can be under state control, and they can do it, even though the president directed them to. See, the president can't nationalize the Guard because they become federal troops. And
I thought that he's sending the Guard down there as we speak. Didn't he sign an order to send the Guard?
That's fine, but they will be under state control. You know,
you think the governor of Texas, Abbott, is not going to accept that?
Of course he is.
All right, then.
Of course he is.
The only cuckoo who's not going to accept it is Brown from California, but they're nuts in California anyhow. Do you know something? Folks, listen to this one. Now, if you want to, I won the I won the popular vote. That's what Hillary keeps telling everybody. Yeah. Folks, they just registered in California over 1 million illegals with driver's licenses.
That's right.
And you can bet your life that they voted, and they certainly didn't vote for Donald Trump. That's just California. And
got-
that's only recent, 1 million.
We're going to have a real crisis someday, because I believe what's going to happen someday, under the Constitution, the Senate and the House can decide whether to allow somebody that's been elected into the House or House of Representatives or the Senate. They can allow it or not allow it.
Allow it what?
Whether, say somebody wins an election and people feel it was done with illegal aliens voting.
Yeah,
They can petition the House
yeah.
and to not seat them. And and they do a study, and if it's true, that person cannot be seated.
Well, that's if they can definitively prove that there was fraud.
This is the problem.
Okay.
And-
Now, you told me last
remember,
week that you
Bob,
you cannot determine.
Difficult. Remember, I told you about Bob Dornan last week. I don't know if I.
Yeah.
Bob Dornan, when he this is a few years ago, when he ran, he lost by 8,000 votes. He challenged it in the House of Representatives. They would not seat Sanchez. They gave them $1 million. It cost $1 million to find out that 5,000 were illegal aliens and they should not vote. So, but then the money ran out and they wouldn't give him any more money, and so she was seated.
Dornan was back in the Reagan years.
This is going back a long time,
Can you put up the comments, because Tim Fenton wrote one specifically to the issue that you were talking about last week, Ralph.
Right.
And Tim says, not the political correctness one. I love that. Well, while you got it, keep it there. That's all. You see up here, keep it there. That's a great. Political correctness is fascism pretending to be manners. George Carlin. He was hilarious. That, Tim, is a fabulous quote. Right. People think about it, because that's exactly, it's getting to the point now, they like to call everybody fascist, the political correct people. They're the fascists.
Right.
Calling others fascist. Right. Back up there with Tim Fenton.
I went to this is from Tim Fenton.
Yeah, it's up there. I
went to the clerk's office to fill out my census voting papers. I was not asked for any proof or ID. I wasn't either when I came in.
Yeah, so
when I came to Lynn, I went up to vote. I had my license and I had my a bill to show that I live in the city. They didn't ask for it. They just signed me up.
But Tim is saying, in effect, what you said is nobody asked you. He was doing the census, filling out the census card and voting paper, and nobody asked for ID or proof or anything.
No.
So consequently, what you're saying, in effect, is a lot of people go there, they get on the voting rolls, and who knows whether they're citizens or not.
The people on the voting roll, this is not Lynn, this is everywhere, in Massachusetts anywhere.
Let's talk about Lynn only
okay,
for now.
We'll talk about Lynn. When we take that, if we get that list, I think it costs $25, you can get the voting list. If we go look at that list, we have no way of determining whether someone's a citizen or not, whether someone's illegal or not. There's no way of determining that, because they would never.
The narrative out there is that that it doesn't happen. Oh no. Oh, well, there's very little voter fraud. You're telling me it could be rampant. I mean, in California alone.
Well,
I guarantee there was several million.
It took $1 million to find out 5,000 of them.
That was way back then, but nobody wanted.
Then.
But no, look. Do you think the Democratic Party wants to stop voting?
Of course not.
All right. So it's all a matter of power.
Absolutely.
But the folks out there got to think about that. Caller, welcome to Frankly Speaking. Caller, you up there? Conservatives should label liberals against the wall as pro-heroin because it all comes from Mexico. Ben, not all, but 90%. And worse than heroin is the fentanyl.
Fentanyl kills.
So does heroin, except heroin, ironically, in its pure form, is not that harmful to the body. It's addictive, but not that harmful. Right. The other stuff, and by the way, heroin is $60,000 per kilo. Fentanyl is $2,500 per kilo, yet a bag of each is the same. So what do you think the drug dealers are pushing? Fentanyl, which has no, and the FDA has no idea what the dosages are.
Fentanyl is artificial heroin, by the way.
That's right. But it's a killer.
It kills you.
And nobody knows what the dosage is.
You can't even go near it, because even if it was if this was in my bottle here and it was in there for some reason, I could die just by going near it.
But
that's how dangerous it is.
The point that he made, that's true. The point that was made, in effect, is if the wall was up and it curtailed 30%, not even 50%, but 30% of the influx. Isn't that a good thing?
I think, what, 90,000 died last year? Or was it 60,000? 60,000. 60,000 died.
That was but how many would have died if it hadn't been for the anecdote that the police and the fire department are jabbing everybody
well,
with?
Well, they carry around with them all the time. The firemen, I don't know if
they have to.
The firemen carry with them, I think, EMTs. They carry with them all the time. They shoot them up. Because if they've overdosed, they have to have it. I don't know how many would have died here. How many in Lynn would have died? How many?
Larry McCully also wrote that proof, the word proof, birth certificate or citizenship, not declare under oath. I believe I had to have a birth certificate when I first registered. And you know what? I'm of the same vintage, maybe a little older than Larry. And I believe I had to have the same. I couldn't register to vote without my birth certificate.
I think when I first registered to vote, when I was, I think I had to be 21 then. I think I registered when I was 21.
We had to be 21.
I think I had to bring unpaid. My birth certificate, I'm pretty sure.
That's what I'm saying. So they don't require a birth certificate?
No.
Well, they better require a birth certificate because that, folks, would solve some of the problems of illegals voting. Now, how, and by the way, I don't believe illegals should count in the census as to apportionment of representatives.
No, I don't think they should either.
You should be a citizen in order to be counted for the purpose of allocating reps to the House of Representatives.
It's not right because it will give too many reps to states like California that has too many illegals.
Yeah.
It would give
They're going to end up with more reps at the expense of Massachusetts. For example, when you and I were kids, Massachusetts had 16. We're down to 10 now.
Right. Right.
And so what we have is we have reps cutting their own throats in our state who support open borders and sanctuary cities and the rest of that type of stuff. Although even California now, the people, the citizenry there are screaming and yelling. They don't want.
They're starting to get very, very upset.
They don't want sanctuary cities. They're going against the state.
They see the crime rate. They see the problems they have with the budget. The people leaving the state that have money. It's not a very good situation in California. Very, very bad situation.
But how soon does it happen elsewhere?
We have a little different situation, I think, here because I think we're more established as far as our economy.
But wait a second, Ralph.
We have a different kind of an economy here.
But wait a second, Ralph. Let's scope it to Lynn.
Okay, into Lynn.
Why was Lynn picking up over 300 students per year for the last 6 or 7 years? They were mainly coming from Central America.
Correct.
Okay. Why?
Well, they were directed by the party in power, wanted them here so they could vote, and so that they'd vote and the power would increase and maintain.
You know what, Ralph? You are such an entertaining guy. I didn't realize, but we don't have but a little time before it's the end of this show.
Really?
Yeah, it's moved rather rapidly. And by the way, callers, thank you for calling. And insightful. You know, I always said the folks that listen or watch, frankly speaking, are the most erudite.
They're smart people.
And they really are. And I want to thank you for the calls. And I want to let you know we'll be here next week, Thursday at 5, live, where truth is our mission, rally our realm, said as we see it, and frankly as well. Have a great week.